This happened back in 2015 when I used to live in a 2-bedroom apartment. My roommate had recently moved out, so I was suddenly struggling to pay rent on my own. That's when I was swayed by the thought of renting out my spare room as an Airbnb on the weekends. My parents helped me furnish the guest room, and when I had guests over on the weekends, I would go over to their place and stay with them. Things were fine for a while, until the first time I rented out the room to some guy named Kenny. He was a few years younger than me and looked like an edgy incel with a wannabe rock star haircut. It was clear that he was at least a bit of a creep from the beginning, but at the time I wasn't concerned enough about who I let stay in my home. I knew my profile picture would probably attract a lot of men to the listing, but I didn't really care. I was gone while the guests were there, so nobody could ever create a problem. But Kenny found a way. He would constantly text me strange things like, "What kind of soap do you use in the shower?" Or, "Which bed do you sleep on?" It was annoying, but I knew he would be gone in a couple of days or so. But just when I thought I'd seen the last of him, he booked the next weekend immediately. I rolled my eyes about it, not expecting this to become a routine thing, but this was only the beginning of Kenny being a regular guest. In fact, once he showed up, he was basically the only guest. This meant I didn't have to worry about not getting the rental income, but it came at the cost of having to deal with every unbearable interaction with him at check-in. He got in the habit of showing up 2 hours early, while I was still preparing the room for him, and he would just sit outside my front door, waiting for me to come out. At 3 p.m. sharp, the actual check-in time, I would squirm out of the door awkwardly and give him the keys, then rush out of there like I had somewhere really important to be. "Hey, where are you going? You can talk to me. I'm a nice guy." I didn't look back. I got out of the building as quickly as possible. I didn't know if the guy was mentally ill or not, but I wasn't trying to stick around to find out. But unfortunately, things got more disturbing from that point on. One night, I started hearing things while falling asleep. There would be a noise somewhere in my apartment, making me feel like I wasn't alone. I remember getting up and shuffling through the dark to check my front door. A huge weight came off my shoulders seeing that the door was still locked. I would then go back to bed assuming the noises were coming from the hallway and that I was just getting paranoid because I let strangers stay in my home. After this repeated itself a few times one week, I decided I needed to take a break from the whole Airbnb thing, so I made the room unavailable for a weekend. I still went and stayed over by my parents' place, just to make sure to completely avoid Kenny. I honestly remember feeling refreshed after not dealing with him for a weekend. At around 9 p.m. that Sunday, I made my way home and was excited to have the evening to myself. I locked the door behind me and set my things down. Then I went to the bathroom to get ready for bed. And when I flicked the switch to turn the lights on, I could see Kenny standing there, holding one of the kitchen knives. The blood drained from my face as he held it against my throat. "You're all mine now. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide."
Please don't do this, Kenny. You can stay here as long as you like.
"Don't bargain with me. I'm gonna get exactly what I want." I tried to back away, but he closed the distance between us and started to force me backwards, cornering me into my bedroom. There, I tried to scream for help, but it was already far too late. Kenny shoved me onto the bed and forced me down, holding me with one hand and keeping the knife at my throat with the other. All I could do was plead for my life, hoping he would let me go, but he didn't. I was trapped and held captive in my own apartment with a monster. I continued trying to get away, but Kenny wasn't budging, holding me against my will. After several horrendous, excruciating minutes, Kenny was done. He got up and began to rob me of my phone and other valuables, just for good measure as he bolted out of the front door. When I was able to collect myself enough to get help, I had to get out an old iPad and use it to contact my parents so they could call the police for me. I sat in the corner of my bedroom armed with a knife as I waited for my parents and law enforcement to arrive. 15 minutes felt like 15 hours as I waited in constant fear, not knowing if the police would show up in time. or if Kenny was going to break into my house again. When they finally arrived, the cops searched the area and were unable to find Kenny. However, it wasn't hard for them to find him. They arrested him at his apartment the very next day. They knew who he was from his Airbnb profile, which had all of his information. Over the course of the investigation that followed, it was discovered that Kenny's obsession with me ran deeper and went on for much longer than I had ever thought. He made a copy of my key early on and was using it to sneak into my apartment. He had been watching me sleeping and changing and other sick, perverted things like that for weeks. All this time, knowing that Kenny was making all those sounds at night just sickens me to my core. I can only help to think that when I made the room unavailable on Airbnb for the weekend, it caused him to have a psychotic meltdown and do what he did. I wasn't okay for a long time after that. I could barely even speak for days, and it's taken me this long to discuss it publicly. I broke my lease on that apartment and moved back in with my parents, and I've been living with them ever since. This story was inspired by a case that happened to a 29-year-old woman returning to her Airbnb from a New Year's Eve night out in New York. The suspect hid in her bathroom and then held her at knife point upon her arrival. It was alleged that he had copied her keys to the Airbnb prior to the whole ordeal. Just goes to show how a harmless outing can turn dangerous real quick. It was around January 2016 when it happened. I felt lonely since I had been single for a long time, and despite the advice of my family and friends, I went on Match.com to meet someone who could finally make me feel whole again. As cheesy and small-minded as it may sound, I just wanted to see Kenny standing there, holding It was around January 2016 when it happened. I felt lonely since I had been single for a long time, and despite the advice of my family and friends, I went on Match.com to meet someone who could finally make me feel whole again. As cheesy and small-minded as it may sound, I just wanted to spend my Valentine's Day with someone special instead of keeping my eyes glued to the television all day while munching on some Cheetos all by myself. After browsing every profile, I finally stopped looking when I found Emma. Everything about her was attractive. She was definitely my type. At that moment, I felt she was the perfect match. So, with no time to lose, I messaged her immediately, hoping she wouldn't give me the cold shoulder. Hours passed, making me feel edgy, but the wait was worth it. When she finally replied, my heart skipped a beat, and we have kept in touch ever since. We called each other day and night, talking about everything and anything, and as the weeks passed, I felt we had grown closer. So, 2 days before Valentine's, we decided to meet up. Of all the fancy stuff going through my head, taking her to a hotel was the best choice. It meant good food and a luxurious room, but the most exciting part was yet to come with her and I on the bed. So, I checked in a day earlier, intending to spice things up a little as I set up the room to create the perfect atmosphere. The following night, Emma was set to arrive. I'm not going to lie, I was nervous as hell, as if it was a first date all over again, but I didn't want to back out now. So, I gave her the details, including the hotel I was at and the room I was waiting in. At first, I was afraid she'd be under the impression that I was desperate, but when she told me on the phone that she was on her way, it boosted my confidence. About half an hour later, I heard a knock on my door. I took a deep breath and opened it, expecting to see the attractive woman I saw in the photos on Match.com. However, I was disappointed when she looked subpar, totally different from the pictures I had seen. She wore a sleeveless shirt and a short flashy skirt with a bulging belly, and dark round circles around her eyes, making her look like a zombie to hurt me. I couldn't say no, and after giving them what they wanted, they kicked me out of the vehicle in the middle of nowhere. It was so dark that I couldn't even see the path I was trekking. There were no light posts nor glowing street signs to give me direction. I was lost, but at least I was alive. Since then, I couldn't look at Valentine's Day the same again. I deleted my profile on Match.com and decided to meet people the right way instead of going online. I didn't know that wanting someone so much could lead me so close to death. Now, whenever it was Valentine's Day, I just spend it at home alone, keeping the doors locked and the house secured. The story was inspired by a real-life case that went down on Valentine's Day of 2016. The male and female shown here were the alleged culprits. The animation pretty much sums up the whole ordeal in a nutshell. The assailants have been accused of kidnapping and robbery, which is punishable by $10 to 20 years in prison. This story happened back when Toy Story was trending. Everyone at school owned a Sheriff Woody or a Buzz Lightyear, and kept raving about how they could swear their toys were coming to life when they weren't around. I wanted one so bad, but everyone knew my family couldn't afford it. All I could do was watch from the corner alone as the other kids played with their toys, always making fun of me and leaving me out. Hey loser, do you really not have a single toy from Toy Story?
No, I do.
Then where is it?
It's at home.
Yeah, right. Prove it. Bring it tomorrow. And if you don't, me and my buddies are gonna have to beat you up for being a lying loser. Got it?
Yeah, I got it. I'll bring it tomorrow.
No, you won't. Bring your mom instead. My dad said he saw her at work last night. Looking pretty good, he said. You know, if your mommy even loved you, she'd let you have a little bit of all that money she makes at the club, but I guess she doesn't. That's sad for you.
No, I have an allowance.
Aw, look at him crying. What a wimp. When the teasing gets bad, all I can do is ignore them and act like they weren't there. But after school, I was sick to my stomach, knowing that my bullies would make good on their promises to beat me up if I didn't bring the right toy to school the next day. The only problem was that I didn't have one. I lied and I now had to get one, but there weren't many places I could go to on my walk home from school. However, there was this one cheap off-brand corner store that I'd walked past 100 times. I didn't think they would have what I was looking for, but I had no other option. I went inside and started to look around all the shelves, but of course all I found at first were the usual convenience store snacks and drinks. After I was lurking and not buying anything for a few minutes, the cashier started to follow me around the store with his eyes. "Can I help you with anything, Chief?" I nervously shook my head no and walked away to hide from him behind the shelves. As I walked closer to the back of the store, I saw a dusty old shelf that had an unusual selection of antique-looking trinkets and knickknacks. I was too young to question why a convenience store would have such things, but I was too distracted to care, because I had found what I was looking for. There was a Sheriff Woody doll on one of the shelves that was still in its original box. In fact, it was a little creepy looking, but it was still the only thing remotely Toy Story that I found. So I brought it up to the cashier. "That'll be $20, kid."
I don't have $20. I only have $5.
"That's not enough, kid."
Can't you give me a deal? This is my lunch money. Please?
"I'm not gonna bargain with you, you little brat. Now put that thing back and buy something that's less than $5 and get the hell out of here." That's when I took the Woody and bolted out of the door. I ran until I got inside my house, where I put the box on my dresser, facing my bed. I felt terrible for stealing, so I left it and stayed out of my room for the rest of the evening. Then, to distract myself from my worries, I watched TV with my mom in the dark of the living room until she had to go to work and told me to go to bed. But when I got up from the couch, I saw the Woody box facing me on the floor of the living room. I never told my mom about it because I didn't want her to find out that I stole, but it seemed like she knew about it and just left it there. I grabbed it and carried it back up to my room, putting it back on my dresser. I didn't think anything of it as I went to the bathroom to take a shower. Yet, somehow, when I pulled back the curtain, the Woody box was in the middle of the bathtub. I freaked out and screamed, taking the box and bringing it back into my room. I racked my brain trying to figure out how it was possible. This time, I made it face the wall. Then I ran to my bed and pulled the covers over my eyes, completely forgetting about showering or brushing my teeth. Unfortunately, it wasn't long before curiosity made me peek out from under the covers. But I was relieved to see that it hadn't moved. Yet as I tried to close my eyes for sleep, I got this nagging feeling in my stomach. I looked one more time to see that the box had turned around, facing my direction. I pulled the covers back over my eyes and froze, convinced I was going crazy. I just wanted the doll to stop moving, but it was like a scab I couldn't stop picking. I had to keep looking. I peeked over the covers again. And now the box was open, and Woody was peeking over the edge, staring right at me. I was shaking uncontrollably. I knew it was pointless to pretend I was asleep. I knew that thing had to be alive. There was just no other explanation. So I looked again, and there he was, sitting on the edge of my dresser, just smiling.
Stop looking at me!
I ran over to the dresser and snatched him from the ledge. Then I stuffed him back in the box, and then jumped back into the shelter of my bed. From there, I could see the doll all tangled up with the packaging inside the box. It looked so uncomfortable. I laid back down for just a second, and right as I did, I heard the box tip over. I quickly looked back, but Woody was gone. The box was on its side wide open. Knowing he was loose in my room, I didn't feel safe enough to lay down. I sat up, trembling, looking all over for him, but there was no sign of him until... That's when a large, freakishly huge Sheriff Woody appeared at the foot of my bed. He grabbed onto the edge and hunched over me, twitching as I crawled back against the headboard, petrified.
You've got a friend in me!
This story was inspired by a viral video of a Toy Story Woody apparently moving inside a box. The footage was taken at a toy store beside a toy shelf containing the Woody doll. Here you can see the Woody allegedly moving on its own. There hasn't been anyone to debunk if this was legit or not, but from the looks of it, it looks pretty eerie to say the least.
Today marks the 1-year anniversary of when my granny and grandpa went away without saying goodbye. My parents told me that they were both doing just fine and that they miss me and my little brother very much. They allegedly went off for a vacation, but they never ended up coming back. I was sitting in my room coloring when I remembered that it was exactly a year ago that they left. But right as I started missing them all over again, I heard my parents crying downstairs. I knew they had to be sad as well. I wanted to console them, so I left my room and headed downstairs to see them in the living room. Yet, when I was halfway down the stairs, I was curious and I knew they wouldn't talk about grown-up stuff if they knew I was there, so I stopped and listened.
Oh, but how are we going to break the news to the poor little girl?
I don't know, my darling. Maybe she's old enough now for the talk.
Absolutely not. Surely her sweet, innocent heart cannot take such... Oh, it just isn't right.
I'm so sorry it has to be this way. If there was any other way I could change this cruel world we live in, you know I would.
Yes, I know you would.
In fact, I've decided they could take me next.
No, I can't live without you. Besides, you know they take us by pairs. You know what we have to do.
No, honey, please don't say it.
We must. It's the only way we can survive. We have to give up George and Peppa. For us.
No. That would be a selfish thing to do, to let those monsters sacrifice them before us!
You stupid old hog. We can make new piglets if we want to, but we have to be alive.
Call me a hog again, you sick dirt gobbling swine! What the hell is the matter with you? What kind of parent are you?
Well. I may take part in a bite of dirt from time to time, but I know where your tongue has been, mister. At least I don't stick my tongue up my... Mommy? Daddy, what's going on here? Why are you fighting? Peppa, my darling. Your father and I are having a grown-up discussion. You should go back up to your room.
No, let us stay. Why don't you explain to her everything you just told me?
Well, I will. You see, this isn't easy to say, but your father wants to...
No, don't put this on me, you stinking pork chop!
Fine! Peppa, your father and I are sending you and your brother off to be slaughtered this year.
The room got quiet. Mummy and Daddy stared at me blankly as I gradually understood what Mummy had just said. I was naive, but not stupid. I remembered what happened to Granny and Grandpa, and I'd heard everything Mummy and Daddy said. I knew what it meant. Peppa dear, go get your brother George. We didn't want you to, but look, it's time for you to, okay? Just listen to Daddy.
Yes, Daddy.
I walked away, trembling and choking on the lump in my throat. But I made my way up the stairs and went inside George's room, where he was playing with his toys without a care in the world. Suddenly, just looking at the innocence of my little brother made me feel like a grown-up, like I had to take care of him.
Shh! Don't say anything, George. Just listen. Mommy and Daddy have gone insane. They're trying to get rid of us. We have to hide right now. Come on, let's go. They're gonna find us in here.
I figured the one place Mommy and Daddy wouldn't expect us to hide in was their own bedroom, so we squeezed underneath their bed. Peppa Pig! What's taking you so long?
Oh, shut up. They've gone and hid. Why didn't you go up with her?
I could hear them start to fight again, wailing and screaming at each other and yelling all sorts of awful things. They stormed up the stairs and started tearing apart the bedrooms looking for us. I could hear everything being destroyed as Mommy and Daddy became more and more like wild animals. I know it's only because they didn't want to be sacrificed that they acted this way, and in some way I understand it. But I still can't fully believe how quickly they turned on us. But I only had a moment to think before they barged into the room. You little brats better come out of hiding right now, you hear me? They were just inches away. I was sure we'd be found. But then, something changed.
Shh! Stop it. Do you hear that?
It was the sound of someone breaking down the front door downstairs. It's him! Hide! Suddenly, Mommy and Daddy were scrambling for a place to hide just like us, but they didn't have the same luck. They were so big that no matter how much they scuffled around trying to be quiet, there was nowhere in which they could possibly hide from what was coming. And of course, it wasn't long before that man, the butcher, started making his way up the stairs. Here, piggy, 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 where are you? Come to Daddy now, my little bacon bits. I want some freshly bled pork chops. Yes, yes, yes. I can hear and smell you. And now all that's left to do is taste you. That's when the butcher appeared in the doorway, armed with a cleaver and a rope. Mommy and Daddy squealed when they knew they were trapped. Poor little George and I were hiding there the whole time, watching everything, unable not to hear the unforgettable sounds of the utmost suffering. Peppa, George, help us, please! We're sorry, we were just... I wonder who this Peppa and George could be. Oh well, I've got my pair of piggies for now. I'll just have to come back for them next year. Finally, the mad butcher was then finished with his business and dragged Mommy and Daddy away, leaving me and George under their bed to finally understand why a pig never wants to grow up.
This story happened a few weeks ago when my girlfriend and I wanted to celebrate our 2-year anniversary together. So, there was no better way to do it than to go on a short getaway, far from the busy city life we were used to. I searched for a few houses on Airbnb and settled on a big 3-story home on the outskirts of town resembling a cottage. It was the perfect place, and so I showed the photos to my girlfriend and she was on board with my selection. According to the app, the house was owned by an older gentleman that looked to be around his 60s. There was a brief set of rules that he put in the description stating that we could only access the bottom 2 floors, leaving the top floor off limits. My girlfriend and I didn't make a fuss about it as we were content with the price and what we saw in the photos. Nonetheless, we dropped by the following week. Like all the Airbnb check-ins, we took a brief tour of the house. Everything seemed as advertised in the photographs. The second floor was where we could find the bedroom and bathroom, while the bottom floor was where the kitchen, living room, and dining room was. Since there were only 2 of us anyway, this was worth it even though the door to the 3rd floor was locked. After all, having 2 floors to ourselves was more than enough. On the first night, we simply hung out and watched some television. I remember it being around 1 in the morning when we were just about to call it a night, but right as we were about to climb into bed, I could hear the sound of footsteps creaking somewhere beyond the living room. The sound seemed to be emanating from upstairs. I shook my head, unsure whether I was just hearing things, but when I turned to face my girlfriend, I could see that she heard it too. So, to put our minds at ease, I left my girlfriend in the living room as I headed upstairs to check where the sounds may have come from. I remembered hearing it again, but much more vivid. It seemed like the sounds were coming from the floor above me. I headed for the locked door on the 3rd floor, taking a deep breath as I walked through the pitch darkness. When I found the knob, I wrapped my fingers around it and began yanking it frantically, but no matter what I did, it wouldn't budge. It was totally locked. "What the hell are you hiding in here?" I whispered to myself. Then, to my surprise, the footsteps immediately stopped. I knew I must have scared off whoever it was up there. When I went back to my girlfriend and explained the ordeal, she instantly messaged the owner, alerting him about the strange noise. About a minute later, the owner responds, insisting that this happens all the time since there were a lot of raccoons in the area. So, to avoid ruining the special occasion, we decided to take his word and enjoy the rest of the night. The following night, we watched some TV again without any interference. This time, no odd sounds were coming from the 3rd floor. However, as we flipped through the channels, a video of an empty room with night vision was displayed on the screen. At first, I thought it was just one of those reality shows, or perhaps a lame horror movie, so we quickly changed the channel after that. Now, we were watching a house from a first-person's point of view, like the camera was near the doorbell. It got us thinking about how bizarre it was for some of these channels to share similar features to the home we were in, and that's when we started putting 2 and 2 together. We flipped through the channels again and were shocked to see surveillance camera footage all over the house, but the most appalling video of them all was an aerial view of the toilet. We couldn't tell if it was the same bathroom as ours, so I began recording with the camera on my cell phone and waited in the living room while my girlfriend headed to the washroom. As she made her way upstairs, I could literally feel my heart beating out of my chest. I didn't want to believe it, but my fear became a realization when I saw my partner on the TV as she entered the bathroom. My heart sank in utter terror. It became evident that the footage we had seen was of the house, which the Airbnb owner must have set up. All of our intimate moments were recorded, our most private thoughts and possessions exposed. So, we immediately packed up and left, hoping no one was waiting to ambush us outside the house. As we ran toward the car, we stuffed our luggage in the back seat and drove off. However, before leaving the property, I could swear seeing someone peeking from the top window behind the curtain. That's when I suddenly remembered the creaking noise from the previous night. All this time, I couldn't help but realize that the Airbnb owner must have been living on the floor above us, surveying and recording our every move. What turned out to be a seemingly innocent getaway turned into a horrific nightmare. I felt violated, abused, taken advantage of. Reluctant to escalate the matter, my girlfriend asked me to complain to Airbnb instead of the police. When I asked her why, she said she didn't want random men from the station or investigation team to see all the private stuff we had done during our stay. Hence, I granted her request and complained to Airbnb. However, after spending hours explaining to them, it didn't seem like we were getting anywhere, so we went around in circles only to receive a full refund and an update telling us that they had banned the owner from using the Airbnb service. Meanwhile, he wasn't incarcerated because he and his lawyers claimed it was only meant to be a prank and that my girlfriend and I had no physical injuries. My girlfriend was satisfied with the outcome, but for me, I wanted to see him behind bars. Since then, I'd sweat and tremble whenever I saw a camera, forever traumatized by the experience. There are dozens of cases on the internet where creepy peeping toms were caught hiding hidden cameras inside their Airbnb residences, but this story in particular was inspired by two disturbing Airbnb cases that are just downright terrifying. The first case was a video of a couple shocked to find that one of their TV channels were showing an aerial view of a toilet, happened to be the same one in their Airbnb home. Whether the video is legit or not, the thought is horrific. However, the second case is what really takes the cake. A man hears noises at night in his Airbnb stay. When he checks the air vent to find out where the sounds were coming from, he sees a secret room hidden inside there. Airbnb has since been contacted for comment. I'm a regular customer at Burger King, always enjoying what they have to offer in their menu. Since the food quality had never ceased to amaze me, I had become loyal to this fast food restaurant for many years. Fortunately, one of the branches was situated near my home, making it a 10-minute walk and convenient to get my Burger King fix. I didn't care if my diet revolved around Burger King, and although I enjoyed their Whoppers, it was their chicken tender crisp sandwich that won me over. I was free to eat as much as I could from Burger King, since my husband was rarely home to cook a nice homemade meal, but I never complained as I wasn't the best cook myself. In fact, I've always admired his hard work, and with him being away most of the time, I could get away with my obsession from Burger King since no one was around to reprimand me, so it was a window of opportunity I couldn't refuse. I would always tell myself that going for a walk as I headed to Burger King was the best way to burn off calories, but deep down, I knew it was pointless, as I would quickly get them back from eating BK all over again. But little did I know at the time that things would drastically change. I was familiar with all the employees working for the Burger King branch near my place, so if a new guy came along, I'd know instantly. Not that there was anything wrong with it, but I felt shivers running down my spine as I glanced at the creep smiling at me as he stared. Then, when I looked across the counter, I was distraught to see that most of their former staff had been replaced. Nonetheless, a change of staff wasn't enough to push me away. I ordered the usual from the creep despite my reluctance, and even when I tried to avoid negative thoughts, he rubbed me the wrong way.
Hi.
I said, unable to look him in the eyes, keeping myself fixated on his name tag. Then I gave my order.
Well, Ryan, I'll have a chicken tender crisp to go, please.
To go? Are you sure? He replied.
Yes, to go.
I said, to go sit at the table? I didn't know if this weirdo was intentionally joking or not, but he was definitely making me feel uncomfortable, so I told him.
I'm sorry, but I'll be taking it home. Thanks.
There's no place like home like Burger King, he said, as he blankly started staring towards my chest. I then placed a few crumpled up bills on the counter and waited elsewhere. A few minutes later, he handed over my order and I immediately got the hell out of there. For a week or two, I couldn't stop the urge to order my favorite sandwich from Burger King, and unfortunately, all the other branches were miles away, a bit too troublesome for me to visit. So, even if I had to see that creep repeatedly, it was something I could endure as long as I had a bite of that tasty sandwich. Then, as the weeks passed, I began experiencing stomach pains that were a bit more severe than the ones I had encountered before. However, I was incredibly stubborn. My husband tried talking me out of it, but I still didn't listen. I kept trying to find other scapegoats to avoid putting the blame on Burger King, but the pain in my stomach only worsened. Then, that's when a thought came to mind. Suddenly, images of that creep appeared in my head, reminding me of how he was hitting on me the other time. So, I suspected that this particular employee was behind this. He must have done something to my sandwich, taking a toll on my health. I was so mad that I told my husband about the creep. Initially, I didn't want him to know, afraid I would forever be banned from buying my favorite meal. But then, I urged him to accompany me to the restaurant to meet the manager and complain about the creep. However, my husband shook his head, telling me it wouldn't be wise since I didn't have any evidence to prove my statement. So, one night, my husband and I decided to do a little investigation of our own. We both dropped by the Burger King, where I had ordered the same sandwich with the creep serving it to me.
Hi, I'll have a chicken tender crisp to go, please.
He snickered and said, "What the hell happened to your radiant glow? You seem rather sluggish and pale today." I ignored him, giving him the payment and putting my sandwich in the bag. Then, I sat beside my husband in the restaurant, took out the sandwich, and began inspecting it. Then suddenly, my partner's eyes grew wide as he said, "What the hell is this?" It seemed like something was moving across the meat. I rubbed my eyes in disbelief, thinking we were imagining things, but we weren't. Upon taking a closer look, we could see about a dozen slugs in it. I felt sick to my stomach. I wanted to throw up. All this time, knowing that I was consuming slugs made me start to act irrational. My husband tried calming me down, but even he couldn't control himself any longer. That's when he went into a fit of rage and started trashing the restaurant, tossing garbage cans and emptying the straw dispensary all over the place. Then he went to the counter and grabbed the creep by his collar, saying, "How dare you put slugs in my wife's sandwich, you piece of shit." The creep then started to act oblivious to what was going on, saying, "Sir, I have no idea what you're talking about." I can tell my husband became more irritated as the man replied without a tinge of remorse. I could tell my husband was itching to deck the guy in the face, but he was somehow able to retain himself. I remember seeing most of the other customers getting up to leave, having lost their appetite after hearing what my husband said to the creep. I then tried to reason out with the manager, but he ended up siding with the bastard employee and kicked us out for causing a public nuisance. Me and my husband were convinced the manager was either in on it, or he was afraid of the damage this would cause to Burger King's reputation. So, we had no choice but to report the incident to the authorities, where we handed them the slug-infested sandwich as our primary evidence. The cops promised to get back to us soon, but as the weeks passed, there was still no news about its progress. Since then, I hadn't heard about the creep or the slugs. This story was inspired by a story that happened at a Burger King branch at Priestgate, Darlington. A young woman discovered a slug in her chicken tender crisp sandwich and accused the fast food restaurant of ignoring her complaint. A spokesperson has since stated that they have begun preliminary investigations on their food management procedures. Upon searching for a follow-up, it seems like the restaurant has permanently closed down.
Never alone. Although I was Andy's favorite toy, he had many other toys to keep me company whenever he was away. It was so rare to find us carefully displayed on shelves, and even after a good scolding, Andy would leave us scattered on the floor. One day, amidst the precariousness, my voice raised against a toy threatening to take this hot broad amongst them all. Her name was Jessie, and she always dressed like me, but the delinquent would always accuse me of being irrational and insane. It happened very often. He would constantly flirt with her, apparent to everyone he liked Jessie a little too much.
Buzz, you don't understand. She doesn't like science or space or guys that dress up in astronaut attire.
Shut the hell up, Woody! You're not the only one who has a Woody around here! So get your ego in check! She's the only broad amongst us! So may the best man have her!
She don't want you. You're no good. The cowgirl needs a cowboy. She's got a friend in me. So piss off and go after someone like Babyface over there.
As we argued back and forth, all the other toys circled us, whispering their thoughts to one another. Then, suddenly, the floor beneath us rumbled, and as we all braced ourselves, the door swung open, prompting us to freeze. Seconds later, a giant teen came came marching into the room wearing his favorite green shirt and denim shorts. As he surveyed the floor, he crouched down and picked me up along with Buzz, suspiciously grilling us with his face up close. What was going through his mind, I wondered. It didn't seem like he wanted to stay around and play, so I admit his presence made me a bit nervous. Then, under his breath, Andy said,
Is my mind playing tricks on me? I swear I heard something coming from this room. Must have been around or something.
Then his eyes scanned the room a bit further, before he finally gave up thinking about it and left.
You sure picked the perfect time to interrupt.
Buzz grumbled.
Hey, Jesse is one thing, but don't you ever talk about Andy like that. Look at you, Woody. Would you stop sucking up to him? Whether you like it or not, Andy will give us up at some point. Besides, he probably bought us off eBay or a garage sale. How dare you, you piece of crap!
Enraged, I moved my ragdoll body towards Buzz, pinning him on the floor as I slammed my fist on his helmet as hard as possible, causing it to crack.
Do you call that a punch, Woody? I bet Bo Peep can do a lot better than you do.
And the fight escalated, prompting some of the toys to cheer for their best bet, while others cowered underneath the bed, afraid Andy would return. And as some of them suspected, Andy rushed back in, the look on his face suggesting he thought we were all moving around. But as the toys were motionless on the floor, I hoped he would let this pass and go about his day outside. Unfortunately, it was no longer the case. His brows furrowed as he picked me up. He said,
I know you're making all that noise. You think I'm stupid?
It was enough to shake my entire body, but I didn't budge. I had to remain as lifeless as a toy, because even though Andy was my best friend, he was never supposed to know. Furious, he threw me to the far end of the room, where I hit the wall before I ended up on the floor, still silent and immobile.
Fine! Have it your way!
Andy hollered as he stomped his feet on the floor and walked out of the room. The blow was so powerful that it knocked me out cold. Hours later, when I woke up, I noticed the other toys avoiding me.
Why are you all looking at me like that? It's not my fault Andy came back. You should all be looking at Buzz.
I couldn't understand why everybody turned their back and ran away like they'd seen a monster. It was a nightmare. I was respected and adored by all these guys, and now it felt like I was their number one enemy. It gave me the impression my face was deformed, looking like a deranged toy, giving everyone the creeps. So, I gradually approached Bo Peep for comfort.
Hey, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. If there's anyone who'd understand me, that's you, Bo.
I thought she'd take my hand and console me, but all I saw was the horror in her eyes before she ran and left her 3 sheep behind.
Screw you! I liked brunettes more than blondes anyway!
I screamed like I never had before. Then, with all the fire within me burning, I charged at Buzz, clawing and chewing at his glass helmet.
I got you right where I want you! And just so you know, you've never had a friend in me! Stop it, Woody! What's gotten into you? This isn't you! Get away from me!
The fear in Buzz's eyes was satisfactory. I had never seen him with that look on his face before, so it felt like I had won, dominating him entirely. Some other toys tried to gang up around me like I was some kind of wild animal, but it seemed my gaze was enough to push them back. I pounded his head constantly, nearly bursting a hole through it, when suddenly I was yanked by something enormous. Then, when I looked behind me, I saw it was Andy, his grin sinister and wild as he said,
I knew it! I knew it all along! You were alive! I knew you were alive! I knew you were alive!
Then, everything happened so fast after that. He gripped me hard, stuffing me inside a cardboard box and filling it with newspaper, which he taped shut at the very end. Moments later, I could hear Andy say something like,
This is perfect. Woody's gonna make someone's birthday or Christmas worthwhile. I'll make sure of it.
I was so exhausted that I passed out. Then, when I woke up, I was no longer in Andy's room. I was still in the box, except it was open. I could recall looking up at a pink ceiling and had no doubt it was a girl's room. So, as I crawled out of the box, I saw a bunch of Barbie dolls staring at me with a condescending gaze that then turned to a look of fear that would be etched into my memory for as long as I lived.
Who the hell are you? And what are you doing in our room?
Hey, I can explain. There's no reason to be terrified, I swear.
I tried reaching out to them, but they all wanted to avoid me.
Why so serious? You've got a friend in me!
This happened several years ago around the